Hello, everyone. We are starting the January blogging webinar. Sorry, we're a little late here. Had some tech issues. Uh, I'm Jason, our membership support specialist, and we've got Jesse Bailey, Johnny Sanfilippo, and Steve Muzon. And I think what we'll do is we'll have everybody start. I still have a poll. There's a poll live. I don't know if anyone can see this poll. I've got 8 responses so far. I asked a poll question of, do you already have your own blog? So far we got 4 yeses and 4 nos, which doesn't surprise me. I did notice on the registration list that we had some folks who had, that I know have blogs, and some folks that are new to it. So, which I would put myself in that camp personally. But I think Jesse, maybe we'll start with you. And my hope was talk a little bit about what got you started and what your blog is. And I'll put your blog address in the chat window here too, so people can grab that. And yeah, just kind of what got you started and what you're using, any barriers to entry, and then how it's mattered in your community. I know in West Palm Beach, I mean, your blog is kind of getting in the nitty-gritty of a lot of issues going on there, so it seems like it's a real good tool in your community. So I'm excited to hear you talk about that too. So I'll let you go, Jesse. Thank you.
All right, sure, Jason. It's great to be here, everybody, and thank you for setting this up. And everyone on the call, thank you for chiming in and taking the time out of your day to attend. As Jason said, I'm Jesse Bailey. My blog is Walkable West Palm Beach, walkablewpb.com. Started blogging about 3 years ago, and my blog really was something that was more of a self-exploratory tool. It was kind of much like Chuck began, I think. It was just something to sort of try to figure out what my thoughts were on these issues of land use, transportation, building more municipally, fiscally sound cities. It was really kind of just a place for me to figure a lot of this stuff out and start to write about it. And I find through writing you start to hone your own thoughts about subjects. My blog is hosted on WordPress. It's a WordPress.com blog. I set it up really simply. There's also WordPress.org if you want to have it self-hosted. But I didn't do that. I mean, all I do is, you go on WordPress.com, you pay for a theme, and you kind of can get going. So, I think, if there's one thing I'd like you to take away from what I have to say, it would just be that don't be intimidated. Get out there and start blogging. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not a planner. I'm not an architect or an engineer. My background is actually in finance. I'm a real estate analyst for a large multifamily apartment company, and as I said, I don't have any formal training in this stuff, but living in West Palm Beach was kind of the catalyst for me to start thinking about a lot of these issues, because West Palm Beach was sort of a hotbed of new urbanism in the 90s. That's what kind of sparked my interest. I really started by picking up Suburban Nation, as I think a lot of people do. That's kind of that red pill sort of book that gets you thinking in a different way. And I went down the rabbit hole. I started reading Jane Jacobs, but one of the real turning points for me was when CNU came to town, West Palm Beach, in 2012. I volunteered for CNU, and that put me in face-to-face contact with a lot of the thought leaders in this area, such as some of the people on this call, like Steve Muzon, and later on I learned about strong towns and connected with folks through all these different online forums and so forth. And it's really funny how you can meet people online on Twitter and then form these really strong friendships with them. It's like, my experience has been that I feel like I have this whole community of people that maybe I haven't even met in person, but I feel like they're really good friends of mine already, just because they're in this sort of sphere, trying to make their communities better places and trying to make the world a better place. So, I don't want to take up too much of the time, Jason, did you want me to cover some of the things that, some of the benefits in the community here? Do you want me to kind of save that for a little later, or should we keep going?
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll have Steve go.
Sure. Well, here, my blog is really more focused around local issues, although I do delve into some issues that are more national in scope from time to time. My blog tends to be a bit more, as I said, focused on the policies and the people on the ground in West Palm Beach. I guess if you were to say, well, my angle is, it's sort of to be constructive, but not, constructive but critical. And when I am critical, I try to not do it in a way as to turn people off. I try to sort of remain in the political dialogue, so to speak. So what I mean is there are issues that come forth sometimes in which I will critique them, a certain urban design issue or transportation issue, but I try not to call out particular leaders per se. I try to focus my critiques on the policy itself. So I think that the blog has been very instrumental in me getting sort of this message across to the community. I've gotten much more involved on city committees, for example. I'm serving on a number of different committees, and I can tell you in the last election that we had in West Palm Beach, the word walkability was probably the most used word among all the candidates. I also serve on a nonprofit board, the Downtown Neighborhood Association. So we held a candidate forum, and I actually sent out a questionnaire pertaining to issues around ideas of urban design and walkability. And all of the candidates essentially endorsed the platform and all the questions. But my blog is not a political blog. It doesn't endorse candidates. I feel like that's kind of a contentious area that I didn't want to go. But we have had an impact. I would say a lot of the impact that we've had has been a bit more intangible, and just getting this idea of strong towns, of walkability, to sort of to raise the profile of these issues to where the community is talking about them a lot more. And for me personally, I've made innumerable connections. I've gotten a couple of job offers. Some developers have gotten kind of reached out to me professionally, and it's raised my sort of brand and professional image, perhaps. So those have been some of the intangible benefits I've received. Some tangible things is I got to go to CNU in Dallas this year because I'm part of the Streets Blog network, which is awesome and incredible. And I've been on local media, print, television, you name it. So it's been really quite a journey for me, and I would highly encourage you, if you're thinking about blogging, just don't be intimidated. Get started, even if you're not an expert. I certainly was not. Just start writing, and you can iterate over time and sort of figure out what you want this blog to be over time. And maybe later I can get into some other tips and things that I learned not to do along the way.
Yeah, I've followed your blog, Jesse, and I think your tone is really important. I think you do a real good job with your tone. How long did it take you to develop an audience, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say to have a significant audience probably took me 6 months to a year. And I think that that's probably fairly typical. Certainly getting engaged in all the different social media platforms is key. Half of my traffic comes from Facebook page that I have, and Twitter. The viral nature of Facebook is such that if something gets shared a lot, it's going to have a reach of maybe a few thousand people or 5,000 people, and I also have noticed that the audience, the people reading my blog, a lot of them are the decision makers, the MPO. I mean, I see the email subscribers, so I know who's subscribing to it, and it's a lot of like county MPO, city officials, and FDOT. So the right people are reading it. Sometimes, I think as a blogger, you can get into this game of like, I want more traffic, and it's never enough. But I think it's important to remember too that if the right people are reading it, that's half the battle. So I would just keep on, and I would love to hear from some of the other bloggers about what they found successful in getting, their blogs a wider audience and getting more traffic to their blogs.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good segue. Steve, do you wanna talk about your blog and maybe start with what got you started and I know in your case I'd be really interested in talking about the platform. I know you're using, I think it's called Paperly or something as well in addition to your blog. So maybe if you could touch on that as well.
Sure, happy to. I have. Can you all hear me? I'm not seeing myself on the screen. Maybe that's normal, but anyhow. I actually have done everything the wrong way. Everything that normal bloggers advise people to do. I'm kind of one to just tinker with stuff. So I'll try something. If that doesn't work, I'll try something else. And one of the just really highly unrecommended things to do that I do is I actually have several blogs. I started with the original Green blog. It's been somewhere around a decade ago. I think that was originally on WordPress.com. I went to TypePad for a couple of years, and then Apple had a really cool tool called iWeb. I went to that for several years until they quit supporting it. And then 3 or 4 years ago, once it was obvious that they weren't going to support it, then I came out. I ported, I should say, to the one I use now called Sandvox. That's one that I have my own host, and it's an app on my computer, and so that's what I use. But that's the original Green blog. I have another one that I call Useful Stuff. It's on Tumblr. Useful Stuff is actually just kind of more of a technical notes to myself blog where I do a lot of different things over time, and so if there's something I do today, I might not do it again for 6 months, and I may have forgotten what I did by the time that I do it again. And so if it's something I need, I figure, well, I'll post it on Useful Stuff, and then if somebody else enjoys it, somebody else might enjoy it as well if I find it useful. There's another one called We Do This Because, also on Tumblr, where it's more about the why to, not the know-how. I also blog at Studio Sky and also at Mazon.com. So anyhow, I'm in a number of different places. Now, what that means is it's utterly impossible for me to actually blog regularly on all of them. I have a theoretical publishing schedule of doing one each day. But my work actually takes me down a bunch of rabbit holes pretty frequently. Like right now, I've been pushing really hard on 3 very, very important projects of very different sorts that have kept me totally busy since October. And so I haven't blogged anywhere since October. So what I have to do to pull that off is that people talk about having a few foundation posts and having most of your stuff be kind of more current event stuff or whatever. Well, in my case, a foundation post, first of all, let me say this. A foundation post is one where you have really great content that is kind of timeless that you can refer people to over a long period of time. And so, for example, my very first post years ago on the original Green blog was I think I had like 3 readers or something like that. It was nothing, and I looked at it the other day after it had been ported to all these other places for in the decade or so since then, and I don't know, it has like 1,000 readers or something like that. And I forget what the number was, and I have a lot of them that will have initially just it might have 200 or 300 readers in the first week now, but I'll check back a year or two, three later, and it may have several thousand readers or something. I mean, but that's in part because I can send people back to them, but also in part because since a foundation post has timeless information, then other people can send people there as well, and so it tends to get linked to over a long period of time. The first thing that I had that actually went viral was an image that I created for a post comparing the size of a highway interchange in Atlanta with Renaissance Florence, and they were about the same size. And about 2 years later, Lloyd Alter from Tree Hugger picked it up, and on Twitter, and actually, I think it's had an audience of over 1 million people since he first tweeted that. I mean, I still keep getting retweets of that even after another couple of years later, and so. But that's the nature of foundation posts, and so that's the only reason I can be even considered a blogger. Otherwise, I would be just one of those, you know, kind of people that are considered to be, you know, kind of faded from view. But because it's all foundation stuff, then it's something that that continues to have value, even though I'm not as regular as that are known and love. As a matter of fact, like Chuck, for example, is one of my great heroes. He told me one time, and you should do like Chuck, not do like me, okay? But Chuck said one time, he said, you know, a lot of people are very serious about going to the gym. They're down there every morning no matter what, and that's something that they take very seriously. He said, I'm that way about blogging. So if you have any doubt about what you should do, you should at least start out like Chuck, and then you can try some weird stuff like me later. But I'm definitely not the recommended blogger. But I'm kind of the outlier that might have some helpful stuff occasionally. So I don't know. Does that get a good start maybe?
Well, yeah, you know, that's one of the reasons I wanted you on, Steve, because I know you're doing some different things and playing with some different formats. So I thought that would be useful for folks as well. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Johnny, do you want to maybe dive in and talk about, you know, sort of what got you started and what you found useful and effective, and you know, some of the basics too as far as your platform and all that.
So I am one of these people that has no grown-up credentials at all. There's no little letters after my name. But I was passionate about the subject. I was always fascinated by why America is full of so many really dreadful places, and why the really cool places are, you know, what I constantly talked about to my friends who got tired of listening to me rant. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just have a blog to direct all my energy, and I found my people, which is kind of fun. So in terms of people who are interested in starting a blog, I'll relate a little story about an old college roommate of mine who is an engineer slash lawyer, and he went into patent law because he understood the engineering and he understood the law, and it was a good fit for his career. And he said, you know, I think I'll start a blog, and that'll drive business. You know, I'll get new customers. And he asked me, you know, how do you create a blog that pulls in business? And I said, first of all, you don't create a blog specifically because you think people are going to pay you to do something. You know, what you do is you create a blog that has really useful content, you know, and it's clear, and it's something that people actually identify with and get something out of. And if you're consistent about it, and if you keep presenting the right material, people will find you eventually. You asked, you know, how long does it take before you get a decent number of people actually paying attention to your blog? You know, you've got to give it a year, maybe two, of, you know, constantly putting out stuff. And you don't put out content specifically to get viewers. You just write about what you're passionate about, and eventually people will come to you. One of the things that does help drive viewers is to start linking to other similar blogs, and you can start feeding off of each other's bases, and that helps a lot. But, you know, if I were doing my blog because I thought I was going to get an audience, I would have stopped after the first few months because, you know, attention to me. Now I have considerably more, and it's kind of fun. But just do what you're passionate about. Don't do it because you're trying to attract clicks. I'm going to switch now to my screen so you can see a little bit of what I've got going on here. Let's see. Did I do this correctly?
Maybe yes, maybe no. Can you all see what's on my screen right now, or are you just seeing my head?
Just seeing your head right now.
All right, let me go back here and do this one more time. I'll show you my...
Johnny, by the way, I should say, is coming to us from, you're at a hotel conference room in Santa
I
Rosa?
am in a hotel in Santa Rosa, California. I'm not in my own home. Yeah, so I'm trying to get a grip of things. So now can you see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so this is my blog, and this is the most recent story I posted. I think I'm trying to demonstrate how I approach things. So these are some neighbors of mine, Steve and his wife Stephanie and their little baby, and they've just left San Francisco. And the whole point of this particular article is that this past month, 5 different friends and neighbors, 5 different households have left San Francisco, and they've gone elsewhere. Now, I've done the obvious thing, which is sort of rant about how expensive San Francisco has become, and there's plenty of people out there that want to, kind of gripe about the tech economy and how it's changing the city in weird ways. I took a different approach. I said, where are these people going? Like, that was the more interesting question. So, the rents and housing is go, but you can't quite manage it. Where do you go? And in the case of Steve and Stephanie, they moved to St. Petersburg, Florida, to a 1920s bungalow Main Street kind of neighborhood because it had the right combination of affordability and walkability and sunshine, and so that's what worked for them. So for me, it wasn't just writing the obvious story, which was going to attract like-minded people who were going to complain about techies, or other people would come in and say we're idiots. I just sidestepped that whole thing. The really interesting thing to me is, where are these people going? Here's another blog post I did a while ago. I travel a lot, so wherever I go, I take pictures of things and I say, oh, what's going on? So I was in Dubai recently, and again, there's a lot of obvious stuff you can say about Dubai. I actually was kind of fascinated by the plumbing. Like, there's no water in this place, like no water at all. And I kind of explored, like, they have to desalinate every drop of water in the city of like 2 or 3 million people. And then I compared that to Hong Kong. This is Hong Kong. And they also have a huge water problem. There's just not enough fresh water to keep Hong Kong going. So they just replumbed the entire city with 2 sets of pipes. One was for fresh water, for drinking and bathing, and then the toilets, all the toilets in Hong Kong are actually organized around salt water. So they have freshwater pipes and saltwater pipes going into every apartment. And I just thought that was really interesting. Like, that's one way of cutting down like 30% of your water consumption. And you don't have to desalinate it. You just pump salt water around. And then, of course, there's California, where we've got snow in the mountains and thirsty cities on the... I like to remind people about San Francisco is that it might be incredibly expensive right now, but it was abandoned just like all the other center cities across America in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So you can kind of go through the history of how it was a rich city that became quite a poor city through the Depression, all the problems of rationing during the war, how all the apartments, all the big grand homes were carved up into lots of little apartments, and then how by the 70s it was sort of rediscovered by a whole new demographic who moved in, bought up these incredibly cheap places, fixed them up, brought them up to a good standard, and now they're multi-million-dollar homes, just like they were 100 years ago. And then my point is, if you go into the future, you might see another down cycle, and things might get much more affordable again. Sometimes there's the whole bicycle thing. You get a lot of hits when you talk about bicycle infrastructure, and I just was trying to make the point that you can add bicycle infrastructure to a crappy suburb, and it's not really going to help. And you can have no bicycle infrastructure at all in a place with good bones, and it works just fine. So you can just sort of go around and compare and contrast, like, what works and what doesn't in different locations. Like, I don't care what you do to this spot. It's not going to be great for bicyclists under any circumstances. And then sometimes I will be walking around taking pictures, and people will get mad at me for taking pictures. And then I realized that there are cameras absolutely everywhere embedded in the environment. Just absolutely pictures in the environment. Like, you step outside your door and you walk around. So every time somebody would complain that I was taking pictures, I would just point to all the cameras that are all around us anyway, and I'd say, you're already being filmed. You know, it's not just me. And then there was this whole like weird moment where people were starting to get squirrely about the fact that like you can yell at the guy with the camera who's standing in front of you, but you really can't stop being photographed because the cameras are absolutely everywhere. So you can move in different directions. And by the way, I originally thought that I would be doing a video blog because I have all this fantastic raw material that I've videoed from all over the country and all over the world. The problem is I'm really, really bad at editing. And my initial blog posts have these really low-grade, crappy videos that I'm kind of ashamed of now. Although the material was good, I couldn't really manage it. So if you start out thinking that you're going to have one kind of a blog and you're not good at it, switch. You know, my still photographs are pretty good. You know, so that's it. Anything else? Any questions?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you what, Johnny. I think one thing you do really well too is not only your photographs, but you really personalize it. You know, you take a lot of pictures of people. You tell a lot of stories of people, and I think those personal photos are very important and encourage people to you know, we're social creatures. We're attracted to people. So if you can bring people into the mix, I think that makes a big difference. We did have some questions submitted. Let's maybe get to a few of those. One question from Daniel asking, you know, how have readers found your blog? You know, through social media, strong tones, word of mouth. Someone want to tackle that?
Yeah, I guess we can go in the order we started.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I would say most of my hits tend to come from social media. You know, just the nature of, in Facebook in particular, when I have a post that gets some legs and gets some viral legs behind it, it can really kind of carry. I remember one post we did was really simple, actually. We actually have kind of a funny story, but I have, well, how should I put this? Befriended a professional engineer who's working deep behind the gates of Mordor, so to speak, and like wants to do good stuff, and he's writing on my blog, kind of under a pen name. So it's a lot of fun. But he's broken some interesting stories. One of which was just a simple like technical bulletin that Florida Department of Transportation put out, talking about how they're now going to allow buffered bike lanes in their design guidance. And no one had really published it online. It was sort of in the esoteric planning and engineering circles, but no one had really published it in like an online space. And when we published it, boy, it just like went viral. I mean, I couldn't believe how many people picked it up. You know, Streets blog and all kind of the urbanist circles, but also things like The Real Deal, which is a real estate trade publication, online publication. I want to say our local media picked it up, Palm Beach Post, and that really got a lot of legs. So other bloggers in the state also shared that news. So yeah, I mean, to get back to your question of traffic and kind of where do you get your traffic from, you know, I think social media, Facebook in particular, has been the biggest one for me, and I'm always looking for new ideas. Though Johnny and Steve, I think, certainly have, I'm sure, a really big following because their blogs are both excellent. So maybe those guys can chime in a little more on that.
Sure, and Steve, before you jump in, I want to mention something that Jesse brought up, just so I don't forget, because I think it's an important point too. You know, I know Jesse, you mentioned engineer, and I think you have another contributing writer or two, if I'm correct. But that seems like a good strategy too, if you're perhaps worried that you won't have time to post regularly.
Yeah, my blog, it's always evolving. I would love to get more writers for it and get more community contributors. It's been a bit difficult, to be honest, to get that. I wanted to get more local writers to sort of cover like the development beat of what's happening in development, because my development posts always get a lot of traffic as well. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to cover that stuff, reading planning minutes, planning board meetings, and so forth. But people love, there's nothing people love more than the rendering of a pretty new building, as as you know, as much as it may not be very feasible. They love this, the picture of the 50-story tower or whatever. So, I those are posts that get a lot of hits, and right now I really have my friend blogging on kind of the pen name guy, and just one or two other people who are posting really more on a sporadic basis. So, really like 90% of the content is still, 80-90% of it is still really coming from me. I would love to get more people contributing though. And I think that if you're creating a community blog, that should be, a goal to try to get more people looped in. Part of it for me is just time constraints too. I mean, with everything I've got going on and the involvement in the community, and got a job too that I've got to try to hold down, it can be difficult to devote all the time to blogging on a regular basis. But I think that Steve made a really good point about, it's kind of like going to the gym. You need to put your running shoes on every day and try to devote like a set time to try to blog. And I'm as guilty as anyone about that, because there are weeks that go by and I don't publish anything, and then some weeks I'll publish 5 posts in my better weeks. So, yeah.
That's really helpful. Steve, do you have any thoughts on Daniel's question of how readers found your blog? What medium, social media or word of mouth or what have you?
One of the many things that I do wrong is that after a while of a couple of years, 2-3 years of trying to do all the analytic stuff, at least the basic free Google Analytics and all that, I really have kind of quit even watching where traffic comes from. And because what I realize is that this is not some blog that I'm writing to make money from sponsorship or whatever, anything like that. It's something that I'm simply trying to get ideas out there. All of my blogs actually are about that, and so and because of the fact that it's also not what the hits are in the first day or two, but the long-term value. And if I checked on a blog on the traffic in a week or two, blog post, then it really wouldn't. What would that really tell me? Because the numbers and where they come from aren't the important thing. It's just getting in the right hands, and so quite frankly, I've quite frankly quit tracking it that much. And let me say this too: there's other purposes to a blog other than just informing a community or getting the word out. For example, when I was writing the original Green Book back several years ago, one of the things that I did is I started about a year or so before the book came out. I started to serialize chapters at the beginning of the book on my blog, and I got so many great comments from readers. I'm very fortunate to have a bunch of readers a lot smarter than me, which everyone should aspire to that. But I'm very fortunate to have that be the case, and as a result, there were so many comments that were made that actually helped the book to be a better thing. So in that case, the purpose at that time was to kind of crowdsource the editing. Now I have a great editor that goes through it at the end, but I had many editors as time went by. As I said, like on the Useful Stuff blog, the express purpose of that is just me taking notes for myself. So the point is there can be many other purposes other than either generating hits, to try to get sales from something or whatever the case may be. So don't just think of it in terms of what all the blog experts talk about in terms of where traffic comes from. You can actually have many different purposes for doing the blog. One other thing too that I found that's very, very helpful. I don't know if anybody's seen the cover of my book, New Media for Designers and Builders, but the cover of that, it has like a dozen different new media modes that you can have, and how those nodes can actually interact with each other. And so, for example, when I I do a blog post, it may link to photos in my photo gallery. It may also have Twitter links. It may have, there's all sorts of different ways that you can interact between your various nodes. And so they become a very Google-ish ecosystem just by themselves. And so when somebody comes in, how many times they bounce around in there from one node to the next, it's not worth my time to try to figure that out. But the fact that it's happening is without question, and it has been a very good thing, because I've had people come in that that had no clue who I was as a blogger, but they loved my photos, for example, and then that took them to my blog or to another part of my ecosystem, and so the more tightly interlinked you can have those things, the better you are, quite frankly.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask Johnny, I mean, what's your take on this? You're a pretty laid back guy, so I can't imagine you obsessing over analytics too much. But maybe I'm wrong.
I wouldn't describe myself as laid back, but I don't obsess about the metrics. Like I said, I think that it's important to focus on content, write about things, find a medium that works well for you. Like I said, I thought I was going to be doing videos. I was not good at video editing, but my photographs were pretty good. I also sort of experimented with the length of the articles. You can write at great length about something and people will just not read it. It's too long. So you have to keep things sort of concise. I do look at my metrics periodically because some stories do get an awful lot more hits than others. And I do know the difference between things that get passed around more than the others, but I don't allow that to dominate what I write about. I write about what interests me at the moment, and I let people figure it out. When I look at my metrics, Facebook is probably the biggest single source of things that get spread around. But linking to other sites, like when I find a site that I'm really interested in, I will try to direct some of my traffic to them so that people can link to that, and then those people very often link back to me. It's not something that I do because I'm trying to get more viewers. It's just something that I do because I think it's interesting information that other people might be interested in. Don't obsess about your metrics. Just produce great content. That's my advice. Also, you're going to get feedback from people, and some of it's going to be complimentary, and a lot of it's not. Let it go. Just do what you are passionate about, and do it consistently, and do it as best as you can. And when you realize you're not doing something well, try something that maybe you have more natural talent for.
I think that's great. I think that's really good advice. It kind of you mentioned something about keeping your post concise, which segues into Fraser's question, which is there a technique you can use to distill the important messages to the public, particularly non-technical people, and kind of follow up to those? How do you create concise content that keeps people's attention? Jesse, you wanna take a stab at that?
Sorry, I kind of lost you there for a second, Jason. Concise content?
Yeah, Frizz was asking if there's a technique you use to sort of distill the important messages to the public, particularly non-technical people, and then keeping your tricks to keep your content concise and keeping people's attention.
Sure. Yeah. Pictures, photos, 100%. And I think there's nobody that's better at that, honestly, of any blog I've read, probably than Granola Shotgun. I mean, the photos that Johnny puts out there are just incredible. Your travels all over. People love that stuff. So, and I also love the design of that blog because he puts a lot of white space, on the page, and it's a really aesthetically pleasant blog. I can tell you, unfortunately, my blog, I've not emphasized that as much as I probably could and should. I think that there's a lot of kind of design optimization I could do that, frankly, it's one of those things I'm just like, it's on the back burner and I haven't focused on it much. And I wish there were kind of like a graphic design, web design person that would just come out of the woodwork and be like, hey, Jesse, I can see you really use some free design help. I would love that. But for the time being, when I put my blog up, I just chose a theme and ran with it, and I really haven't tweaked it much. I certainly haven't done any back background coding or CSS or anything. I mean, I don't touch HTML or anything. I mean, very, very, very basic stuff. So yeah, to get back to the question of concise content, I think photos are really key. Videos are always great, embedded videos, and lists. I think people, who was it? Dan Cachette of what is it? Reimagining Austin, or I can't remember the group he's part of, but I met him at the Streets Blog Summit at CNU, and he called it a term I hadn't heard before, which is a listicle, which is basically an article that is a list. So I think if the viral nature, the really short attention span of current media is such that I think if you can distill down your points to like a few bullets, say 5 to 10 bullets, that can be a really good way to convey information too.
Very good. Steve, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things. One thing that I've found that is the absolute best training ground that I can imagine for being concise is actually Twitter. I will regularly test out new ideas on Twitter, even in advance of a blog post, or maybe I didn't even realize it was going to be a blog post, but if I start tweeting about something. And the point is, there's a lot of mindlessness that goes on Twitter, no doubt about that. I have some colleagues I love and respect that just hate Twitter because they say it's just so stupid. But my point is, if you cannot distill down to the essence of an idea that is tweetable, you may not understand that idea well enough yet. I think that the entire 10 Commandments can be expressed in about 4 tweets. I think that the Gettysburg Address is more like 12 or 14 tweets or something like that. I actually put both of those documents into Twitter form, and to prove those points. And so, no one can certainly say that either of those documents are mindless. Matter of fact, quite the opposite. They really one changed a nation, the other one changed the world. And so one of the big problems that we have all today is bandwidth. And so the greatest favor you can do to your readers is to actually distill down to the essence of what you want to talk about, so they don't have to sort through a bunch of fluff because you haven't thought about it enough yet. The old story about I think it was Mark Twain that said, I was going to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time. In other words, so that's why he wrote the long letter, because he didn't distill it down. But anyhow, so Twitter is absolutely great. Is training for writing a concise blog post. One thing that was mentioned just a moment ago about the design. If you look at my original green blog, it was designed the oldest of all of mine, and the one that's at studiosky.co is the most recent. You'll notice that the most recent one is much simpler. Now, I've designed all of these myself, but the most recent one is far simpler. Back before the Great Recession, a lot of people with their web presence had stuff that was really kind of gummed up with a lot of complexity. And we not only tolerated that then, we thought it was kind of the thing to do. Now, of course, people are saying, we don't need all that extra junk. Let's get down to the real essence of stuff. And so actually getting a better design, it's not totally as simple as this. You still need, the right fonts and all this, but it may be basically a process of taking things away as opposed to adding more pretty things to it, quite frankly. And because the whole character of readers today is much different than what we all were, before the Great Recession.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Johnny, do you have any thoughts on kind of distilling and writing concisely? You've shared a little bit along those lines.
Yes. Now, can you see me, or can you see my screen?
I can see you.
Okay. I'm going to switch to the screen. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so my advice is keep it simple. It's not that I do anything specifically, yeah, I keep it simple because I can't do complicated things. I don't have the technical skills to do anything too advanced. So if you're looking at my blog, I used to think that everyone watched my blog on a big screen at a desktop, and then because I'm old, and that's how I do it. Then I realized that half the people or more that are reading my blog are reading it on a tiny little screen on their phone, while they're doing something else. So having a lot of clutter just didn't work. Whereas having something that's basically very simple, very clean, some interesting photographs, colorful stuff, interesting people, that works really well. And I do like to write. I mean, I really like to explain what it is that I'm showing people. But if you have 14 pages of text, well, they just don't have the time. I did run a test. I used to have a different format on WordPress that had a little bit more clutter. And I ran it through a Google test, and it told me this is not great for mobile applications. This is not like the clearest way to express your content. So I changed the WordPress format and got it to be cleaned up. And I think that helped a lot for the way people are reading my blog. And this is India. It was the difference between a road and a street. Streets are full of people and activity, and it's very convivial. And then you go to the road, and it's all just traffic, and little children are getting mowed down by trucks. So keep it simple. Yeah, and the way you keep your text concise is that you write a long story and then you cut out most of it. I just checked. I have 49 half-written blog posts because they're too long and I haven't boiled it down enough. So write your story and then cut out most of the stuff which is superfluous, and then put in lots of cool pictures.
That's excellent. I think while we're sort of talking about the writing process, I'm going to get to another question that is along those lines, asking, do you develop a series of blog articles, or you find it's better to just write what you're feeling at the time, or is it kind of a mix of both?
Are you talking to me?
Johnny, why don't you start, and then we'll just go in reverse order this time. Change it up.
Ask the question again.
Yeah. Do you develop a series of blog articles, or do you just kind of write what you're feeling at the time? I think for you, it's largely based on your travels, it seems like.
Different things inspire me at different times and different places. So, like I said, I was out in the world taking photographs of things, and people would start complaining that I was taking their photograph out in public, and that inspired me to write about all the embedded cameras in the environment. So that was just something that rose up, in my life experience. Sometimes I want to write about a topic. I'm writing several different stories right now about the affordable housing crisis in Northern California. There's just such an enormous gap between how much people are earning and what it costs to rent or buy anything around here, and all of the normal solutions that we tend to lean back on are just failing. They're just not meeting the gap. You can't build anything new to meet the demand. Rent control just screws up the market even more. I mean, no matter what it is we do, it's a problem. And so what's the actual thing that people are doing? Some people are just leaving. They're leaving the state. Some people are, living 14 in a room or whatever. So it's a very complicated situation, and I kind of have to break it down into lots of little pieces because it's too complex a topic to take on all at once. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling. That's what I do. I ramble. That's my technique. I ramble, and then I try to break the rambling down into little pieces and put pretty pictures next to them.
Yeah, but it does seem like you do a mix then. I mean, sometimes that's what moves you, and sometimes it's, it is like a theme, like you said, like the California housing affordability issue. Sorry, Jesse, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on what you're saying, Johnny. I find that there's like this tension all the time between like wanting to like write your magnum opus versus like just getting stuff out there Twitter style, like Steve was saying.
Hey, Wanda.
And I do think he makes a great point about being able to distill your message down to 140 characters to ensure you understand it. But my experience, at least, is that don't spend like 8 hours or 2 days working on some, novel of a post. Instead, break it up. Break it up into a series of posts. If you feel like that post is going to be super long, like break it up into 500 to 1,000 words and just publish it as a 5 or 6 part series or something. That's, I see, that would be my experience.
Great. Any additional thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I would emphatically second the idea of breaking up the posts. And as a matter of fact, what I've had happen over time when I do break them up is the one that'll lead off with. There will be a number of comments on that post that that will enrich the posts that come after it. Enriches the conversation, because it really is a conversation. It's not just me spouting out stuff and people sitting there and reading it and that's it. And so, yeah, by all means do that. But another thing too, in terms of where the source of the ideas come from, I have two primary sources. One of them is if I'm working on an idea at the time. For example, as soon as I get done with these two real important jobs I'm working on right now and actually get back to blogging again, my next big project is going to be a book I'm working on called Walk Appeal, that makes the proposition that walkability isn't good enough. Do you want, for example, food that is merely edible, or a drink that is merely drinkable, or a book that's merely readable? And 30 years ago, that was good enough to say, hey, walkability was a big achievement back then, but now we really want to have places that people love to walk, not just that they're able to walk. So anyhow, so that'll be my next big thing, is that book. And so I may have a whole string of blog posts that are about that book as I'm writing it. And of course, they're part of the process of writing, like I did with the original Green. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, I have a little app called OmniFocus. It's on both my phone and my Mac and my iPad. And so when I'm somewhere that I can't be doing something else, like I'm writing somewhere or something, waiting in line or something like that, if I have some ideas, I may just sit there and churn out, 10 or 15 ideas and put them down, write them down in OmniFocus under my Stuff to Blog About folder, and then come back to them. I mean, there's stuff in there that's 3 or 4 years old, but it's kind of those timeless foundation post ideas that I haven't even blogged on yet, but I still can at some point in the future. It's not like I just forgot about it and never think about it again.
That's an excellent suggestion, Steve, because that is a big thing. Obviously, if you get an idea randomly, you sort of want to record it. I know I use another one that's good is Evernote. Again, I have it on my computer, have it on my phone. You can tag notes. You can set reminders on notes. You can even do voice notes or even speech to text notes. So I found that to be really useful to save those ideas, those aha moments that when you're not by your computer. Kind of a nitty-gritty question here. I know some of you kind of touched on your hosting options, but Ron's asking what's the best hosting option for a beginner blogger. So you maybe talk about what you're using, and if you thought that was a good choice at the beginning, or if you have any other thoughts on for what a beginner blogger should use for hosting. Do you want to start that, Jesse?
Oh gosh. I might not be the best one for this question because I don't even think I know who my host is, honestly. I think I may have gone with whatever the HostGator, or I don't know, that rings a bell. I don't know if I went with the default WordPress.com recommendation, so I'm probably not the best one to answer that. There may be some other folks with better suggestions.
Okay, that's fine. And yeah, because you're on WordPress, right? That'd be another thing. I'd be interested in knowing what platform people are using too. I think folks would find that helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm on WordPress.com.
Okay.
There's I have two for you.
Go for it.
Okay. There's WordPress.com is a real easy recommendation. It's free. You get on there. Now you're very limited in what you can do, so you don't want to do that forever probably, but you can certainly start out that way. And you can actually involve a number of bloggers. I made an aborted attempt to get the TradArc listserv to actually go online, and so there's a TradArc blog, and I signed everybody up for it that wanted to be on it, but then it it quickly died because they love their little secret garden of discussions rather than actually coming out where people could see them. But anyhow, so WordPress can actually do a number of things. It's just that the look and feel is limited if you have the free version. And then of course there's Tumblr. Tumblr is another really good one that's free and that you can do a fair number of things with. But either one of those I would say would be a good starting point if you don't want to pay for anything, and if you want to do something that's just pretty easy to use.
And Johnny, you're on WordPress, is that correct?
Yeah, I
you
am
use
not
for
a
host?
technical person. I'm a digital immigrant due to my advanced age. So I went with WordPress because it was simple. You can register your domain, you could have hosting take care of everything. It was pretty much a point and click kind of a thing. It's maybe $100 a year, and I actually opted for the no advertising, no nothing. You pay a tiny bit more, and it just means that every time people hit your blog, they don't have to deal with pop-ups and ads and all that kind of stuff. I'm not really doing this for money, and it doesn't cost me much to maintain the website the way it is. Now, if you were trying to make money, if you had things you were trying to sell, if you were trying to, you would take a totally different approach. And WordPress or Squarespace or whatever, there are all kinds of things out there. And I think the younger you are, the more savvy you are with that sort of thing. I went with the idiot-proof model just because I'm an idiot. I just don't know anything about computers. And I'm quite satisfied with the way things are working out. Yeah, that's it.
That's great. I know Squarespace will incorporate hosting. I think Drupal and Weebly do that as well. So there's a few services out there that people can check out that make it a lot easier and have some templates too, which is really nice. So another question we have is, what's for frequency? We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but when do you feel how infrequent can you be before you feel it gets dangerous, or you start noticing problems or people losing attention? If anyone wants to take that one, go for it.
Yeah, I guess I'll tackle that one first. The truth is I don't really know because I haven't really measured those analytics in any serious kind of a way. So it would be just a shot in the dark, honestly. But I suspect that the more frequently I post during the week, the more traction I tend to gain with my posts as they sort of. I do think that there's a pattern of the more posts I do in a given month, certainly I see just my traffic numbers go up. Just like we've all kind of stated, it is all about content. If you're creating content, good content, the traffic will come. The traffic will get there. So maybe some of the other guys have some other insights on more of the analytics.
Any other thoughts?
I'll say this: I tend to, as I said earlier, I do all the wrong things, and so sometimes I'll have a flurry of, like on the Original Green blog, I might do sometimes 2-3 posts a week, and then sometimes it might be 2-3 months in between, and so that's the wrong thing to do. What my aspirational goal is to actually post once a week on each of the blogs. I know that I'm not going to do that all the time, and I know that there'll be these rabbit holes like the ones that I'm down right now that prevent me from doing it for an extended period of time. But I think I think that's the ideal of posting once a week. If you can do that with good, serious content that's really rich and useful, I think that would be the ideal to aspire to.
I'll chip in here. If you're starting a blog, I think one technique you could use, which I did when I started, is have 10 blog posts ready and release them once a week. And while you're releasing the 10 original ones, maybe you can do it once a week, maybe you can do one every 3 or 4 days. and then you're creating new ones to back them up to replenish your stock as you release them. So you have a little bit of a reservoir of stuff, so that when you do go through a dry patch where you're just too busy with your life to do anything for 3 weeks, you can at least pay once a week. I think is a good minimum. More is better, but once a week is fine. There's so many blogs that I follow that I really look forward to. Like, I know somebody's going to post every Monday or every Thursday, and I look forward to whatever they have to say. So if you use that once a week minimum, and you have some in reserves for those weeks or months when you just can't seem to get anything new out there, I think that's a pretty good rule. I like to do more than once a week, but that's a good baseline. And just because people they're interested in what you have to say, you should give them a little something every week.
Sure. Kit asked a really good question here. I had a feeling this one might come up. Any suggestions on how to handle bad commenters or trolls that can derail productive discussions?
Don't respond. Just let them say what they're going to say and move on.
I take a bit of a different view on that, and that is that a troll or an ill-tempered person is actually somebody giving you the opportunity to take the high road. And so I actually like when that happens, because it not only does that well, first of all, if you leave the comment on there, it makes you more real. If you sanitize all of those, then you're looking corporate and plastic, and so I always leave them on there. But it gives you the opportunity to be wise or good-natured or whatever it is that they weren't.
There's a difference between a troll who's just sort of baiting people just to be obnoxious and somebody who disagrees with you and says something. I don't censor my comments. You say whatever you want. I leave it there. That's fine. Everyone can read it. But there's constructive criticism where you can engage in it, and I do a lot of that. Constructive criticism, I will respond and go back and forth with the comments and sort of clarify my position. And sometimes that actually does help me understand my own position better. And sometimes I realize down the road that I'm wrong, and then I can adjust. So I'm very open to that. People are just saying obnoxious stuff. Leave it there. Let people read it, and it speaks for itself.
Hey, one thing. Let me jump back in real quick, if you don't mind, and that is there is one type of comment that I do always delete, and that's the comment spam, where somebody says they'll say something nice, but it'll be with a link, and they're trying to get you to go to their site. In other words, it's like, thank you so much for this great information. I really appreciate it, and then click here. Now that stuff, that's just wrong, and I always delete that as quickly as I find it.
I have an automatic filter that does that for me. It can spot the Chinglish.
Is that Discuss? I know we use Discuss, and that does a good job of filtering out some of that spam.
My blog uses WordPress commenting, and it works pretty well, although I would like to see a little bit more activity on my comments. Some articles get a fair amount, but I feel like there's a bit of a barrier to entry just requiring someone to log in to a new login system that's kind of proprietary. I think Discuss is probably one of the better ones, just because I think a lot of people use Discuss. It's it's like if you're on Facebook, you're linked into Discuss or whatever. So it would be interesting to know if there's a way that a WordPress.com blog can have a Discuss a comment section. I don't know that you can do that. I think you may have to host your own WordPress.org site in order to get that as a plugin. But I could be wrong on that.
I will say this: I absolutely love the Facebook comments module, because what happens is when people will post a comment, they have the chance to either click or unclick the box to say also post on Facebook, and a lot of them do. And then the people that know nothing about me, that are their friends on Facebook, might see what they see their comment as the post with the link back, and then they'll come on and start having a discussion. And I never would have known anything about that. They would have known nothing about me otherwise. And so the Facebook comments have been very, very good to me.
Saying that's a good segue. Jesse, do you want to talk a little bit? You mentioned it in the comments. I don't know if everyone's checking out the comments, but there's been some talk about you have a Facebook page in addition to your blog, and it sounds like that's easy to sync, and sounds like you get some traction there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. The Facebook page was just social media for dummies, like it's really really easy to set up. I mean, I think you go under your account and like create a page, and you can literally create a page on Facebook in under a minute. So you know, it's nothing real fancy. I mean, as I've mentioned before, I haven't invested a whole lot of time into the graphic design of my site whatsoever, nor have I invested really a lot of money into my site. I'm with Johnny on this. I mean, I was very low barrier to entry. I wasn't gonna spend $5,000 on my blog. I wasn't gonna spend $500 on my blog. I mean, I've probably spent maybe under $100 for everything to get it going. So, I mean, don't let this intimidate you. I would recommend everyone out there interested just like go to WordPress.com or Tumblr, because those two sites are pretty brain dead simple, and you can just get something started, you know, and iterate over time. And you know, I'm kind of getting off topic a little bit, but I would also maybe recommend that you keep your blog name something that you can grow with. You know, I don't know what exactly that might mean, but just think about that. Like, think about, is this going to evolve into, is this going to just be a local governance blog, or is it going to be a blog that's national in scope with a national audience, or, you know, is it going to turn into an advocacy organization over time where I'm actually going to create a 501c4 out of this or something? Like, what are your objectives? So those are just some things to think about. It's something I continually struggle with myself because, you know, it's I've been running my blog a while and have had thoughts of creating an organization around these issues and incorporated like nonprofit, you know, to sort of lobby. Maybe lobbying isn't the right word, but just, you know, coming up with ideas, doing projects locally. But you know, is it like, should that be a spin-off, or should it take the same name? I don't really know the answer, but I think those are things you should be thinking about as you get started.
I think those are some real good thoughts. You know, I want to point people over to the comments too. Morgan, you made a really good point that you know, as an elected official, it can be a little trickier to start a blog. You know, you've got to kind of balance between, is this the official position, or is it my personal position? You know, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, as he says. And we talked about this the other day actually, and you know, two blogs I recommend. Mike Williams, and they're both linked in the comments here, but Mike Williams' blog in Fargo, North Dakota, Renew ND, is tremendous. He does a good job of being a city commissioner and you know, still being able to share some thoughts and really move the conversation forward in his community. And Ron Veitler in Lower Macungie, Pennsylvania, is on that same boat. You know, he's on his township board, I believe, and is really you know, able to. He does a really good job of addressing issues in a way that I think moves the conversation forward and actually really helps the dialogue in the community. So those are some to think about if you know, if you are in that spot of, you know, being on the zoning commission or being an elected official of some sort.
I have one question for elected officials, and I run across this all the time as well. There's so many of them that can't even imagine having any kind of a blog or a Twitter feed or anything like that. And so the question is this: you have absolutely no problem at all getting interviewed. You love to be interviewed, where someone else writes up what your message is. Would it not be far better to write up your own message yourself?
Yeah, I think
I can make a comment about this. Just from my own experience, yesterday I was at a city council meeting here in Sonoma County, mostly just to observe the process. I was curious about, you know, there was an RFP for a project, and I walked over to some firemen who were there. They were there to answer questions about how this project would be impacted by the fire marshal's minimum requirements and all that. And the two firemen were there, and I asked a pretty simple question, and they sort of just stood there stone-faced, smiled weakly, nodded their heads, and just didn't say anything, because they had been to so many of these events and talked to so many members of the public that no matter what they said, somebody would misconstrue it in a bad way. So, there's a culture that's very, very, very risk averse. So having somebody else ask the question and you saying something bland is their go-to mode. It's not that they don't have opinions. It's not that they're not charming, wonderful people. It's just that the rules are set up for saying anything. So just try to keep it simple. That's my experience.
Sure, that makes sense. I have another question from Kit asking, if any of you have other favorite blogs, especially non-planning blogs that have simple but impressive design that you recommend people check out. Anyone can jump in.
Yeah, I have to think for a second. Gosh, yeah, okay. Couple blogs, I guess you could call them blogs, that come to mind. Well, the first thing is not really a blog per se, but it's more of a platform for bloggers to write, is medium.com. And Medium is it's a really nicely formatted platform for people to write stories, and it's totally focused around the content. So, again, very good design, and I feel like that site is getting a lot of traction for, people write about all kinds of different issues on it, but it's really cool, and people can actually call out like a certain line. Say you wrote a line or a paragraph that really hit home with someone, they can comment sort of in line and onto the side of the article. So there's sort of this like dynamic quality to the writing where it sort of feels real time in a way, and interactive, which is pretty neat. I also like there's a blog called it's kind of like a Freakonomics sort of a deal. A lot of esoteric take on kind of interesting to me as well. Gosh, I'm trying to think of. I'll let the other guys jump in while I try to think of some other ones.
And Jesse, you kind of cut out a little bit, so maybe if you don't mind in the comments typing some of those that you just mentioned. I know you'd mentioned Medium, which I've heard a lot of people really like that platform.
There's a new media blogger, a fellow named Chris Brogan, that I started following a couple of years ago. Has some great ideas about a lot of these things, and his blog also is when you first go there, you might say, "Isn't this a bit too simple?" But then when you're there for about 10 seconds, you say, it's exactly right. And so I really like his blog. It just has a good kind of a good after the Great Recession feel to it, like I was talking about a minute ago. There's a couple of colleagues of mine, Dung and Niket architects, that have recently split up. So I have no idea what they're going to do with their blog. I haven't been there in the last month or so since they split. One is more focused on branding, the other more on straight up architecture. But their blog is or was the most beautiful I've ever seen, bar none. I mean, it just absolutely everything just completely exquisite about it. And so if it's still there, or for so long as it's still there, you should definitely go there and have a look at that one.
Great. Yeah, if you don't mind maybe throwing those in the comments too, Steve, I think that'd be really helpful for folks.
Sure.
Well, I tell you what, I think we're getting towards the end here, but maybe we'll just kind of go around the horn and see if anybody has any kind of final thoughts or final comments. I think this has been really helpful. I mean, you guys have been blogging for a while. You have a little bit different feels to your blogs, and hopefully this has been helpful for folks. But Jesse, are you still there, or did we lose you? We might have lost Jesse. Johnny, do you have any closing thoughts you want to share? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to make 2 recommendations for blogs that I really like, if that's okay.
Go for it.
All right. So the first is Up in the Valley. This is a Los Angeles-based blog that I love. Partly because the guy who writes it, and he and his wife are really quirky. This is sort of like what if you had $1 million, maybe $1.2 million, you could buy this house. You know, okay, you don't have $1.2 million. How about if you have 800,000, maybe you can get this house. Maybe you only have 500,000. You know, you could get this crappy condo somewhere. You know, and then another one. I think they're friends. They live in the same neighborhood. There's this great. He takes fantastic photographs. It's here in Van Nuys, and he'll take these pictures of buildings, and he'll describe, you know, the architecture as an isolated object, and, you know, what's going on all around it, you know, favelas that sort of spring up in the drainage ditches and things. So those are two interesting recommendations up in the valley and here in Van Nuys. They're really just approaching the place that they live, warts and all. And I like the writing, and I like the photographs, and it's an interesting perspective. Even if you don't live in Los Angeles, there are an awful lot of places that look a lot like San Fernando Valley all over the country.
Those are great. Yeah, thanks for adding. Sorry, I kind of cut you off on those. But and maybe that'll be a good segue. Do you have any any closing thoughts, Johnny, or any parting notes you wanna leave people with?
No, just do it. You know, if you have a passion for a subject, and it doesn't really matter what the subject is, there's an awful lot of people out in the world that, you know, you don't need to appeal to everybody. You need to appeal to the handful of people that share your interests. Do it. Don't do it because of the clicks. Don't do it because you think you're going to make money. Do it because you enjoy the process. Do it consistently. Do it as well as you can. Be willing to make mistakes. You know, it's just a blog. Nothing terrible is going to happen if you screw it up. Change. Be flexible. See what happens.
That's great. Jesse, you want to give your kind of final take here?
Yeah, I would 100% echo what Johnny said. Just do it. You know, don't you know, paralysis by analysis and think about it too much. Just get out there, get it started. I will maybe add a few tips of things I learned, so you might be able to kind of avoid the missteps, perhaps. One thing I think you should try not to do: don't alienate your crowd before you've even gotten an audience. You know, like, don't go over and, like, your first post is like raking the mayor over the coals or whatever, and calling everyone out. I mean, I found that a lot of you know, the substantive things that I'm doing in West Palm Beach have a lot more to do with me taking the conversation offline, actually meeting people face to face in person, rather than simply blogging about them and sort of being the kid with the spitballs that I'm, you know, spitting spitballs from the back of the room. You know, so like I would encourage you to kind of move the conversation to an in-person, face-to-face kind of a thing, and also I kind of wrote down a few things. Let me see.
I love that suggestion of getting out in the community. Yeah, serious. You're not just kind of an anonymous person behind a screen. I think that makes a ton of sense, especially because, you know, I'm hoping and I'm assuming that, you know, a lot of people, and big reason we did this webinar today is, you know, to advance these conversations, you know, in our communities, and blogging's a great way to do it. And, you know, like you said, get out and meet people so there's a face to you. It's great.
And the other, I was just looking at my kind of brainstorm, some other things I wanted to mention here, was borrow liberally from other bloggers. Like, you don't have to, like, do the moonshot with every blog post, you know? I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, like, the amount of my original thoughts on my blog are, like, not many, you know? I'm kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. I mean, really, like, I've been hugely inspired by Strong Towns, by the CNU, by people like Steve and Johnny and others. So I would take those ideas and kind of repurpose them to your situation and your community. And I would encourage you, look at my blog. I mean, like, steal my ideas, like, take my stuff and repurpose it to your place and your neighborhood. The more people we have doing that stuff, the more we're going to reach a wider audience and eventually help us all grow this movement for building stronger towns. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Go out and do it.
That's great. Thank you so much. Steve, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to just kind of the almost the kindergarten chat here real quickly because I think it's really important, and both of the other guys have touched on it as well in what they said, and that is that when you think about writing a book, that's such a terrifying idea to most people that they say, well, I can't do that. I'm no expert in that. I just that's not me. And blogging is sort of book writing light, if you will, in the sense that it's sort of the same thing. It's just in smaller packages. And so a lot of people have some of the same fears on that, or insecurities, or whatever you want to call them, but not quite so badly. But my point is, whether you're talking about writing a book, which to most people is unthinkable, or blogging, which is only slightly less unthinkable, then I would say this: you may not be an authority or an expert when you begin to write, but you will certainly become one as you write, because you're not going to put out embarrassing stuff. You're going to think about it, and you're going to spend some time working it out. And also, when I first started to write the original Green blog, had I not written that blog, it would have forever, the whole idea would have forever remained just a warm fuzzy in my mind. I had kind of a good feeling about what these ideas should be, but I never was forced to actually put them in order until I started actually blogging about it. Another thing, too, and that is that when I first started, I had no clue it was going to be a book. I was just trying to organize ideas in my mind and get them out there and see if there were any kind of resonance with people. And it was literally probably 2 or 3 years later when it actually occurred to me that I need to put this in book form. But it started out with just simply a blog, and so that's something that in both cases it was nothing but, whether a blog at the beginning or whether a book, it was just a warm fuzzy to begin with. But I did become an authority in the field by simply going through the hard work of blogging again and again about it, and then finally writing about it in written form. So don't limit yourself on what you are today. The one thing you do need to know a little bit about whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be what you do for a living, but it has to be something for which you have great passion, because there will come times that you simply, if you don't have passion for it, you'll simply let it go. If you have passion for it, you'll keep on doing it. That'll get you over the rough spots, and you don't know what it will turn into for you, or what it will actually transform you yourself into over time. The first step is to start.
That's great. I think those are great insights, and it kind of reminds me too. One of the things I enjoyed that you said earlier, Steve, was talking about when you were putting the book together, how much the comments informed the book. So it is this kind of dynamic, moving process where not only are you sharing ideas, but you're evolving your own ideas and refining those ideas through this process. And I think that seems like a really valuable component of this exercise. Something you really get out of it. I do want to mention a couple things real quick. I did put a link to our Member Blogroll, so if any of you have blogs that aren't on there, please add that to the Member Blogroll. And also, if you're going to start a blog, let me know so we can get it on the Member Blogroll. I think it'd be great to get it out there. We try to post a member post at least once a week, usually Thursdays at noon. So we take some posts from a Member Blogroll and highlight them on the Strong Towns blog. And I guess finally, I just want to give a big thanks to our three panelists. You guys were great. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're all busy with the work day, and Johnny, you're in a hotel room, and Steve, it sounds like you're in the middle of a big project, and Jesse was helping me doing some technical troubleshooting. Google Apps just released like a crazy new security patch, so it kind of messed things up a little bit. So really appreciate you helping me with that, and appreciate everybody for joining. We will have a recording of this, so I'll send out that link. We actually have a webinar coming up on Wednesday, February 3rd, with Todd Littman from the Victoria Transport Policy Institute. That's part of our No New Roads content, and so we'll have that webinar. I'll send an invite out for that, and then I'll also in that email include a link to this recording, so folks can, and we'll post that on social media as well, but so folks can go back and watch this webinar if they would like. So with that, I'll let everyone get on with their day, and again, thank you everybody, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Jason, if it's not too late, one quick thing. Next time
Yes.
you organize one of these, we need to hear from the ladies, and there's like 4 white guys talking. We need to mix it up a little bit more. Just
Amen.
a little bit more next time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, good point. We definitely need more bloggers other than guys that two bald white men and Johnny.
I have hair, but it's gray.
Yeah.
Speaking about
And
that,
it's not like all the white guys are like very generously allowing other people to enter the conversation. We're actually going to learn things that we're not going to know any other way unless we hear from other voices.
Absolutely.
Amen. Actually, Rachel had a really good post on that a couple months ago on the blog about about the need to diversify the movement. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
and get Grayson Johnson on this. She's fantastic.
But
Oh yes.
But the great thing about almost everything in the new media is it is entirely self-appointed. In other words, nobody tells any of us to, you should blog about this, or you need to. You're appointed to do this. It's everyone is just simply they take it upon themselves, and so everyone out there that doesn't blog you need to be asking yourself. Maybe I should be doing this. I'm not like these guys. I'm different in some way. I need to add my voice to the mix as well. Join in, by all means, please.
Absolutely, and then let us know when you join in so we can get you on the blog roll and start promoting you and really helping lift your sales that way too. All right. Well, thank you everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
take care.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.